Chapter 1, Section 5, Adding and Subtracting Real Numbers. That's your learning target for today. All right, we've already learned what the meaning of sum is. That means plus. And difference means minus. All right, let's use this a little bit to see if we can do the first three problems in this practice. Look at the first one, number 1. Number 1 says, cross out the expressions that do not show a difference. Well, we could cross out 15 plus 6 because that doesn't show a difference. But 14 minus 3, that's a difference. Remember, difference is minus. Then we have 4 times 8. Well, that's not a difference. So we can cross that out. And then 48 divided by 12. That's not a difference. That's quotient. We can cross that out. Okay, so the only one that shows difference in here is the 14 minus 3. That's the only one we don't cross out. Number 2 says, circle the expression that shows sum. Remember that sum means plus. Well, let's look for the one that has plus. This one has minus. This one has divide. Up 42 plus 3. This is the one we would circle that shows the sum. Let's take a look at number 3 here. Find the difference of 20 and 15. What's difference? Difference is a minus sign. So we're going to say 20 minus 15. All right? And the difference in this is 5. That would be your answer right here. Number 4 says find the sum of 38 and 19. Well, sum means plus, so we would say 38 plus 19. Oh, I'm sorry, plus 9. And that would equal 47. All right, next is going to be working on some vocabulary. Inverse. What does inverse mean? It says an inverse is the opposite or reverse of something. In other words, if we have the number 5, what's the opposite of 5? Negative 5. If we have 16, the opposite is negative 16. If we have negative 2, the opposite is 2. If we have A, the opposite of A is negative A. That is your inverse. All right, let's take a look at number 5 here. It says write the additive inverse of each number. Well, let's take a look at the additive inverse of each one of these numbers. We have 7. The additive inverse for this is negative 7. We have negative 3. Additive inverse is 3. We have negative 11. The additive inverse for it is 11. And 9, the additive inverse is negative 9. Next, let's learn about absolute value. What is absolute value? Absolute value is actually pretty easy. And you'll see something like this. You'll see a number and then 2 straight lines on either side of that number. That means absolute value. And what the absolute value does is whatever number is in between these 2 straight lines, it makes it a positive. So if we have a positive there already, then the absolute value of 7 is 7. But if we did the absolute value of negative 7, the answer would also be 7. That's what the absolute value does. It changes it to 7. Let's look at an example here of a couple different numbers. If I had 6 plus an absolute value of negative 3, what would this equal? Well, if we rewrote this, it would be 6 plus the absolute value of negative 3 is a plus 3, which equals 9. Notice what that absolute value does. It changes everything to positive. So if we take a look at example number 6 here, and it says here, I want to compare or write whether these are less than, greater than, or equal to. You should know your inequalities by now. If you don't, let's review this real quick. An inequality for less than would be something like this. 2 is less than 3. All right, if we did this, 4 is greater than 3, and then 3 equals 3. So those are your 3 inequalities or equalities that we're going to work with in this case. Let's take a look at number 1, or number 6 here. We have the absolute value of 3, and then we have the absolute value of negative 3. Remember what the absolute value does. It makes everything positive. So this would be like saying 3 and 3. And if we look at the symbol here, which one will we use? Well, we'd use our equal sign. Let's look at the next one. Negative 3 and 3. What's the absolute value of negative 3? It's 3. So we would have 3 and 3, which means it would be equals again. How about number 8? Number 8 is negative 3 and absolute value of negative 3. Well, if we got rid of the absolute value, it would be negative 3 and 3. Which one is the greater? Well, 3 is the greater. So the arrow points away from that greater number. And in this case, negative 3 is less than 3. What if we had it this way? Absolute value of 3 and negative 3. Well, we know what the absolute value of 3 is. It's 3. So this would be the greater one, so it points away from the greater one to the lesser one. And it says absolute value of 3 is greater than negative 3. Let's take time to learn a little bit about number lines. Number lines are nothing more than a line. And I always like to put dashes starting in the middle with 0. And then I count off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then I go negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, negative 6. So it's nothing more than taking a line, putting some dashes on it, and numbering them. That is a number line. This is where it really starts to help you. And I know a lot of students have a problem with negative numbers and positive numbers. So the example they show here is negative 8 plus 4. All right, negative 8 is a little bit out of our realm, so we can put 2 more dashes here and make this negative 8 down here. And we're going to start at negative 8 right here. And this plus says we're going to add 4 to it. So it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 right here, which is a negative 4. So we know negative 8 plus 4 is a negative 4. Last, I'm going to teach you about subtracting real numbers. Now, the way they want to show this in here is not exactly the way that I want to teach you. They're doing things like this. If I have minus 7 minus 2, it's the same thing as saying minus 7 plus a minus 2. All right? I'm going to tell you in this case here, I would be using a number line. And I would be, let's say I put my minus 7 here. I make minus 6 here, minus 5 here, up, down. And I go minus 8, minus 9, minus 10. And if I say I start at minus 7, and I go minus 2 more, where am I going to? A minus 9. So minus 7 minus 2 equals a minus 9. I don't really care for teaching it this way. Just because you're doing extra steps, I don't think you have to. I'm going to show you some real slick ways to work with negative numbers in just a second. Let's erase this. Okay? Here's some things I want you to remember. If you were going to add 7 plus 2, you would just add them together, wouldn't you? And this would equal 9. If you go a minus 7 minus 2, notice that the signs on both of these are the same. So it would be just like adding the 2 together to 7 and 2, except now you're going to put the sign, the minus sign on there. Minus 7 minus 2 is minus 9. Notice the difference? These are both plus, and this becomes a plus. These are both minus, so this becomes a minus. But all we did was really add them together, right? Now what happens when we have -7 plus 2? I'm going to show you something pretty slick. And even if it was like this, 7 minus 2. You would figure this one out pretty quick, wouldn't you? 7 minus 2 is what? 5. Guess what -7 plus 2 is? It equals -5. And here's what you do. If you see numbers with two different signs, like -7 and 2, subtract them. Take the bigger number and subtract the smaller number from it. All right? And then give it the sign of whatever the bigger number was. In this case, it's negative, so negative goes with the 5. Here, you're subtracting the 2. This is a plus sign out in front of it, right? So you go 7 minus 2, which you know is a plus 5. You see how that works? It is a great way to pick up how to subtract and add numbers.